The Raven's Oath, a saga of choice, loss, and becoming. Chapter 1. Raven. Winter crept towards Ascafjall on a breath of wet wind. It slid between the trunks of the mountain forest like a living thing, carrying the scent of snow, frozen earth, and distant ice. Raven felt it on her skin long before she saw its sign. The cold clung to her cloak, crept beneath the leather of her riding gear, and turned her mare's breath thick and white in the darkening air. She urged the horse onward along the twisting woodland path. Branches clawed at her sleeves as though the forest itself wished to slow her. Somewhere above, ash trees whispered, pale leaves shivering together in the gathering dusk. An old saying stirred in her mind, one she had heard since childhood. No wind crosses Askefjall without first touching the ash. Raven did not know who had spoken those words first, but every winter they returned to her, heavy with the meaning. The ash was the vine of the world. It drank the winds, it remembered. And now that wind was rising. Darkness would come with it, and in Askefjall darkness never came alone. Wolves prowled the outer paths once the light faded. So did other things, nameless and hungry, born of long winters and forgotten magic. Raven was no ordinary rider of Askefjall. Even wrapped in her winter leathers and travel-worn cloak, she carried herself with a presence that made the forest seem to lean inward as she passed. She was tall, powerfully built, not with the bulk of a brute strength, but with the balanced force of someone shaped by motion and survival. Years of training had carved discipline into her muscles. Every movement was deliberate, economical. Her hair, pale as frost on dark stone, was braided tight along her scalp before falling in long silvered strands round her back. Ritual ink framed her eyes, marks worn by the warriors of Askefjall, not for adornment, but for oath and identity. Beneath them, her gaze was crystalline blue, steady, unflinching. Those eyes unsettled most people. They did not merely see, they assessed, measured, as though Raven were always looking not only at what stood before her, but at what lay beneath it. She had been trained for war since childhood. She could loose an arrow at full gallop, bring down a charging beast with a single strike, and hold her ground against men twice her size. Yet violence did not define her. Resolve did. She fought not for glory or cruelty, but because she would not be broken, and because those who stood behind her would not be either. Some in Askefjall whispered that the old gods had shaped her with particular care, that her beauty was not gentle but forged, like steel drawn from fire, the beauty of storms and high peaks, of winter skies heavy with snow. To stand before her was to feel both drawn and wary, as though one were in the presence of something rare and dangerous. Raven leaned forward in the saddle and whispered to her horse, urging it faster between the black barked pines. Then she saw the owl. It perched on a long branch ahead, pale feathers ghostly against the deepening green of the forest. Its eyes were not amber, but crystalline blue, the same piercing shade as her own. The horse slowed of its own accord. Raven did not press it onward. The owl did not flee. It stared at her, unblinking, not watching, knowing. A pressure settled behind her eyes, not fear, something older, quite weight, as though the forest itself were holding its breath. What are you? She murmured. The owl tilted its head. For a heartbeat, Raven felt it pressing at the edge of her thoughts, not with sound, but with meaning. Something elusive, like smoke slipping through her grasp. Then the wind stirred, the branch swayed, the owl was gone. Raven released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Imsa, he whispered. The seer would know. Of that she was certain. Night was falling. There was no time for riddles. She drove her heels into the mare's flanks and galloped through the darkening forest toward home. The fire in her hearth was still warm when she arrived. Soup simmered where she had left it, filling the timber house with the scent of herbs and rabbit. As Raven shed her cloak, hung her weapons, and crouched by the flames until warmth returned to her finger. Outside, the wind moaned through the ash trees. She ate slowly, savoring the heat and the simple comfort of the meal. Her muscles, sore from hours in the saddle and the hunt, gradually loosened. 3 rabbits lay cleaned and prepared, enough for the coming days. Yet no matter how full her belly grew, the owl would not leave her thoughts. Those eyes, that stillness. Sleep came late and not gently. She stood in the forest again. The trees were different now, taller, darker, the branches arching overhead like the ribs of some ancient beast. Mist curled around her boots. The air smelled of cold ash and old fire. The owl waited before her. Follow me. The words did not sound, they settled. Raven obeyed. They moved until the forest opened into a clearing she recognized without knowing why. At its center lay a stone fire pit, blackened, still faintly warm, as though someone had only just departed. The earth around it was pressed flat with the marks of boots and resting bodies. Someone had been here. The owl perched on a nearby stone. Why have you brought me here? Raven asked. The owl met her gaze once more, then it took a flight, vanishing into the trees. The clearing remained, empty, waiting. Raven woke with a sharp rush. Night pressed thick against her windows. The fire had burned low. Her heart still raced, but she felt no fear, only certainty. This had not been merely a dream. Something was calling her. Dawn found Raven already awake. She ate little, pulled on her riding gear, and mounted her horse before the village had fully stirred. Cold bit at her cheeks, but restless heat moved beneath her skin. Yrsa would have answers. The seer's cave lay deep in the mountains beyond a narrow forest trail where moss clung thick to stone and old magic lingered in the air. As Raven approached, Yrsa's voice reached her, low, melodic, waving through the trees in a ritual song older than Asclepial itself. Raven halted, unwilling to disturb the working. When the song ended, Yrsa turned, as though she had known all along that Raven was there. A slow smile touched her lips. Inside the cave, firelight danced across rune-carved stone. Raven told her everything: the owl, the dream, the clearing. Yrsa listened in silence. I have seen it too, the seer said at last. Raven called. The owl, you, the fire pit, the forest. Yrsa's gaze had gone distant. The runes spoke of it as well. And what do they say? Raven asked. The owl, you, the fire pit, the forest. Yrsa's gaze had gone distant. The runes spoke of it as well. And what do they say? Raven asked. That you must go to the clearing. That what waits for you there is your destiny. Raven's jaw tightened. Destiny can mean death as easily as fortune. Yrsa met her eyes. It is a meeting. With whom? Yrsa did not answer. She only said, You must go. And in her silence lay both joy and sorrow yet to come. Chapter 2. Runa. Runa was breathing heavily. Her chest rose and fell as she stood still, forcing herself not to tremble. Exhaustion weighed on her limbs. Her throat burned raw from chanting. Beneath it all, something steadier held her upright. Relief. She had done it. Alone. For the first time in her life, she had faced a dragon without her father's voice beside her, without his presence anchoring her. She had always known this moment would come. Knowing had not made it easier. Her family had been dragon wars for as long as stories remembered. The old tales spoke of the first descent, when dragons came down from the high firelands, and men met with them with spears and fear. Dragons answered with flame. Villages burned. Forests turned to ash. The gods watched as the land itself began to die. So they chose a few, not warriors, not kings, but those who could endure fire without hatred. They were taught to stand, not to rule, to guard, not to command. These were the first dragon wards. They did not bind dragons, they bound the space between dragon and human and held it steady. To be a dragon ward was not merely to understand a dragon's tongue or hear its thoughts. It meant calming fury before it turned to fire, negotiating when fear threatened destruction, and when all else failed, standing between the dragon and human to prevent annihilation. Most dragons were not cruel. Left unprovoked, they wished no harm upon humans. But fear bred violence, and dragons, ancient and proud, did not forgive easily. Runa had grown up in Drakenborg, a village named for those ancient wards, the watchers who stood between fire and flesh. Her father had taught her everything: how to approach without hesitation, how to meet a dragon's gaze and never look away. To avert one's eyes was to invite mistrust. Fear could not be hidden from a dragon, it had to be mastered. When a dragon accepted a dragon ward, it would lower itself to the ground. That was the sign. Sometimes it took hours. Sometimes a song was needed, low and steady, woven from old words that soothed even the fiercest hearts. Dragons were wise, curious. In the end, they always listened. Runa had left Drakenward because her father had died. He had not been old, though the burden he carried had etched deep lines into his body and face. A Dragonward bore more than fire. He bore responsibility, loss, and the weight of other lives. When death came, it was quiet, peaceful. For Runa, it was devastation. There had only been her and her father. Her mother had died many years before, leaving memories softened by time. Now Drakenmort felt hollow, empty in a way stone could not fill. She would find Arden. He had gone north to fight in a war not his own. Rumors spoke of a great battle, of bloodshed in the northeastern lands. Some claimed he had survived. Others said he had been seen near Askefjord. Such tales could not be trusted, but they were all she had. So she packed what mattered most, saddled her best horse, and left Drakenwort behind, perhaps forever. The thought ached as the village disappeared from sight. Runa was a beautiful young woman, though she rarely thought of herself that way. To strangers she appeared fragile, slender, quiet, almost ethereal. In truth, she was strong, not tall, but disciplined and capable. Her father had taught her the axe, the sword, the shield. She knew how to stand her ground. She had turned 18 only months before. In Brackenward, that was considered late for marriage. Many expected her to choose a man soon. All except her father, who had always known her path would begin with the dragons. After 3 long days riding westward, sleeping little through cold forest nights, Runa approached Ravnik, halfway to Askepjol. She hoped for supplies, perhaps even a bed. She saw the smoke before she saw the fire. A dragon circled above the village. Flames tore through the rooftops. Runa urged her horse forward, but she did not ride into the village. There was nothing she could do there yet. Instead, she veered towards a hill behind the settlement and dismounted. She began her work. Her chant rose sharp and clear into the air. The dragon heard her, circling once, twice, before landing heavily before her. Fury radiated from it, hunger for vengeance still burning bright. Runa met its amber eyes and did not look away. She did not move. She did not reach for her weapon. She sang. Lower now, steadier. Her voice anchoring the air. The dragon trembled. Fire flickered beneath its scale. Slowly, its breathing eased. At last, it lowered itself to the ground. Only then did Runa step forward. She laid her hand against the dragon's head. When she asked what had driven such destruction, grief asked her. The villagers had taken its unborn, 2 eggs, destroyed. Tears stung Runa's eyes. She imagined the pain as if it were her own. She stroked the dragon's head gently as she spoke. I understand. I feel your loss. I cannot undo what was done. The gods allowed this, though their reasons lie beyond us. She swallowed. You have made them pay, guilty and innocent alike. Now they suffer as you do. I will speak to those who remain. They will know what they have done and why they were punished. Dragons and humans were meant to share this land. Fear has taught us otherwise. She rested her palm more firmly against its scales. I ask you now to return to your cave. Leave these people behind. I give you my word. The dragon listened. Sadness dimmed its eyes. At last it rose and took to the sky. Runa watched until it was gone. She rode into Hravnik. The village lay in ruin. Smoke lingered. Ash clung to everything. She crossed the river, the water still warm, and reached the trading square where the survivors had gathered. She dismounted and spoke to them, honoring her promise. At first they raged, then they listened. None among them had taken the eggs. There would be no rest here. Ravnik could offer no bed, no supplies, only sorrow. Runa mounted her horse again and followed the shallow river away from the ruins. She was exhausted, body, mind, and soul. But she did not stop. She had to keep going. Chapter 3. Arden. Arden did not remember when the screaming stopped. Rain fell steadily, washing blood into the mud beneath his boots. Bodies lay where they had fallen. Some enemies, some men who had stood beside him only hours before. He leaned on his sword, breathing slowly, forcing his hands to still. They always shook afterward. He had done what he always did. When the line broke, he held it. When someone fell, he filled the space. When a cry rose behind him, he turned without thinking. That was the problem. War did not reward men like him. It consumed them. He wiped his blade clean, though he knew it would never be truly clean again. Blood lingered in the grooves of the steel, just as it lingered in his memory. He looked north, where the fighting would continue without him. Then south. Askepjol lay beyond forest and stone. He knew which way he would go before he admitted it to himself. And for the first time since war began, Arden turned his back on the battlefield and walked away. He had not gone far when he found them. The road south cut through a shallow valley where the land still bore the scars of fire. Trees stood blackened and split, bark peeled away as if clawed by heat. The air smelled wrong, burnt, metallic, sharp at the back of the throat. Arden slowed his horse. A cart lay overturned beside the road. One wheel still turned slowly, creaking with each rotation. Two bodies lay near it, unmoving. A third shape shifted weakly in the grass. Arden dismounted without hesitation. The woman was alive, though barely. Her leg was burned badly, skin blistered and blackened. She clutched a child to her chest, rocking him in silence. The boy did not cry. His eyes were wide and glassy, fixed on nothing. "Easy," Arden said softly, though he did not know if she could hear him. She flinched when he knelt beside her, fear flashing in her eyes, fear of him, of his sword, of what it might be. "Fire," she whispered hoarsely. "It came from the sky." Arden did not ask more. He did not need to. He scanned the ridgeline instinctively. Nothing moved there now. No shadow crossed the clouds, but the land itself felt unsettled, as though something immense had passed through and left its weight behind. He worked quickly, tearing cloth, binding what he could. He lifted the child first, then helped the woman onto the cart. She cried out once, then bit it back. "You're safe," he said. He did not know if that was true, but he said it anyway. A sound rolled across the valley, then low, distant, more felt than heard, not thunder. Arden stilled. His hand went to his sword, though he did not draw it. He knew better. Steel was useless against what made that sound. The woman's eyes filled with terror. "It's still near," she whispered. Arden listened. The sound did not come again. "Move when I tell you," he said. "Toward the trees. Stay low." He did not chase the threat. He did not shout defiance into the sky. He did not pretend he could stand against fire. He stayed until the valley was quiet again. Only then did he move on. He could have returned to Drakenmore. The thought came more than once. Home meant warmth, familiar voices, the comfort of ordinary days. But he knew deep certain that it could not be yet. The war had not broken his mind, but it had carved itself into his soul. When word reached him that the rival tribe was raiding the northern settlements of Skallium, burning villages, violating women, slaughtering children, he had not hesitated. His body answered before thought could follow. Someone needed to stand. The cost had been high. Faces followed him now. Not enemies, those were easier to forget, but villagers. A woman screaming a name he never knew. A boy clutching his leg as fire consumed the house behind him. Arden had fought without mercy, forcing a path through blood and flame. He had saved some, not all. That knowledge weighed heavier than armor. He sought Yrsa because he needed to know what came next. If the gods had spared him, it was not without reason. Whether he was meant to return home, to live, to raise sons, to teach them when to lift the blade and when to lower it, or whether another path waited for him beyond the war. He rode hard, sleeping little, hunting when he could. He wanted distance from the battlefields, from places where death still clung to the air. The gods had spared him serious wounds. He did not know why, but he would not waste it. At a river's edge, Arden finally stopped. He washed blood from his clothes, laid them across sun-warmed stone, then stepped into the water himself. The cold stole his breath. He scrubbed until his hands ached, until nothing remained what was not his own. His reflection wavered in the current. The man staring back was older than he should have been, eyes dulled by things they could not unsee, lines carved by exhaustion. That is not who I am, he thought. Resolve settled into him like iron. Compassion did not require annihilation. Justice did not demand endless war. He tended his wounds carefully, pressing herbs into each cut, mindful of the fevers that claimed so many after fighting ended. Before nightfall, he mounted his horse again. Askefiel was close, but the next day he would reach it, and perhaps there, bound in stone and silence, he would learn why he had survived.